screen. Oh, man, you even started in the right place. Josh, the only now I'm in a funny mood. You can tell. The only problem, Josh, is in that formula box. Can you go to the little up arrow in your? You've got two lines in the formula box. Can you make it one line?
Ah, sure, sure.
And this is the more key thing. There. And the reason you had two lines is at some point, I don't know how it, Brian, if you can tell me why it lasts like that, you had a formula that went two lines, which is, I'm sorry, Josh, is criminal, but that was somebody else who was doing it. Okay,
It was me.
so
I will be mindful. I think I
no, no,
know
no, no,
when.
that's okay. That's okay. I'm being silly. Sorry. Okay. Now, if you go all the way down, okay, and so in this, I said, okay, put let's put a refinancing. And I said, look, we have all of our different projects. In project one, let's make our refinancing in year two. And then in the next one, let's make it in year three, in year four, in year two, in year three. I saw one of these case study modeling exams. I would say somewhere about 30 or 40% of them ask you to do this refinancing, a surprising number. One I saw, it was the rest of the whole thing was really simple. It asked you to do 5 different refinancings. I think you'd have it may be somebody else. I'd love to hear this too. Might have some ideas where you can do it all in one big kind of simple place, but I think you'd have to put 5 different debt issues, pay off the earlier issue, redo the next issue, and refinancing is an enormous part of this. It almost when I asked people a while ago, did you have refinancing in the mall? I remember this one guy said, "Oh, that's totally not allowed. You cannot do refinancing because we do not have a term sheet where we can read the credit spread, the interest rate, the DSCR, the debt tenor. So it's illegal." For this was a big company too. I'm not going to name who it was. And then I went to them a couple of years later and they said, "Oh, we always use refinancing," because they were losing every bid if they didn't do it. So that we can do it at different periods, and it's always better to do the refinancing early. That's going to be just simple math. I don't know. That's the math of the IRR. We keep coming back. So can you put the date of the refinancing in? Now, the date of the refinancing, that's going to be 2 years after the COD. So I would say use very good. Oh, Josh, are you? I love it. Go all the way to the top and find the COD date, which I hope is 1 July 25 there. And then let's use 12, or don't do that. Put months, put the word months, because we had some variable, I'm almost sure, for 12 months in a year, and multiply that by the number of years, which is just right above there is that okay? Very good. And then press enter. And remember, Shift Control 3 if you have a English speaking keyboard, or what do you have, Josh? Does Shift Control 3 work?
It should do.
Or just Control 3 if you've got generic macros open?
I do have, yeah, Control
Okay.
3.
So that's my handmade shortcut, because your hash, oh, you have a UK keyboard, that's why. And can you just press Shift Control R? So we're gonna do this at different time periods. Does that work? Uh-oh, it's really slow. Oh, shoot. Okay, good. Oh, not that bad. And then I said, let's make the DSCR. We could make the DSCR all different things. Okay, and then I don't know. Let's make the second one 1 point. Let me see up at the top. Let's make 1.25. Do you see up there in line 66 and 67? Now, if you just think conceptually, we have the debt to capital constraint. If the debt to capital constraint is in place, here's what you do. Once you hit refinancing, you do not give one crap about some balance sheet of the company. You use entirely, if you've got actual cash flows, the idea is you use DSCR. Maybe I'm a little bit extreme there, but you don't go and use debt to capital. But if you size the debt with debt to capital and can refinance 3 years later or something with the DSCR, you can get a big increase in the amount of debt. If you get an increase in the amount of debt, that's a dividend you get. You got to put that in your pocket. If you were where I am right now, everybody refinanced their house. That was the big deal in the whole financial crisis. You refinanced your house when the interest rates went down and the value of your house went up, and you built swimming pools. I'm sorry, that's what happened. And then I put a credit spread, and you noticed I put a credit spread that's different than the credit spread we had at first. Now, could you go to input S for just a minute? And in input S, now everybody in the world does the following. They all put a date at the top, and okay, for me, input S is anything that has a time series in it. Could you go down and instead of putting a year there, go down to line 25, and let's put this, go down one, and let's put let's call this the age of the refinance debt. And what we're going to do is put a changing credit spread. Okay, but first just put one. Let's put 1 to 12, kind of like the 1 to 15. So just type 1 or use sequence. Let's use sequence, so we're okay. Just put equal sequence and then tab and then open the bracket and put a comma and then just put 15. Okay. No, you need a comma. So you need a comma before that's because otherwise it'll do rows instead of columns. And then go down and let's put credit spread, and let's make our credit spread change. And what we'll do is use I guess we could put different kind of scenarios, but let's make the credit spread go from 1% and then let's actually do this. No, and then copy that for about 3 years and then put 1.5% in the next year. And then maybe if it's a mini perm, stop there. Then in year 7, actually, that's the key. Make it go up to 3%, or put 3.5%. This is when they're almost forcing you to refinance. Now, we won't do this at first. All the way. Let's go all the way. Or they could even have a gigantic step up. That's what they're really doing. They're saying, okay, and this is because of Basel. Oh, what a beautiful city. My mother was from there. It's Basel. The Basel Banking Accords say you're supposed to the cost to the bank dramatically increases if the loan is 7 years. So that's what a mini perm kind of does. But they'd almost force you to refinance and have a balloon payment in year 7. But we're just gonna, for now, do kind of a similar kind of thing where they're just almost begging you to refinance in year 7. The only reason you wouldn't refinance if your project really was horrible. And then you say, no, we're going to keep this debt here because if I try to get other debt, it's not going to work. And so that we're going to illustrate how this input S works. Now let's go back to input C. And then I've seen other people do it. So I used to think, oh, this is just me. I put a tail of 2 years. That means we're going to make a much longer bond or bank debt. We could change that. Maybe 2 years is a little aggressive, but I'll leave that. And that means the remaining life, let's just I should have thought through this. The remaining life at refinancing is, can you just take the total life up at the top in years, and then subtract the 2 years at COD all the way at the top? It should be 25 years or 30 years or something like that. 35 years, and subtract the the year of the refinancing. So if you, oh, that was a range name, that's bad. Press and go up to the 2, that's fine. Go up to the 2 in line 80. In line 80, not that 2, the other 2. That's how many years you have left, okay? And then, can you do me a big favor? Enter that, putting that range name in, how horrible, I don't know why we did that ages ago, but change the life. Oh, very good. I never saw you could do that. No, we can't do that. Go up to the cell that was a life and just, we gotta almost type that cell reference in there. Go way up to that 35 years. And just, that was, what was that? That was, what cell was that? Oh, shoot, it was 18. So let's go down and just change the life to 18 so that we can just, very good. And then now you can copy it. Otherwise, if you would have copied it, it would have always took the same thing. So that's the remaining life. But then the debt tenor is that remaining life minus the 2 years of the tail. Do you see that? So that's our new debt tenor on the refinancing. Of course, I'm not saying that you should you'd actually have to renegotiate and all this. But again, what that person said, oh, you don't know exactly what the refinancing is, so you have to assume it's zero. For me, like, that's like saying the oil price is zero. Okay, so now we've got some of our inputs. And the reason I had you change the I'm sorry, the reason I had you change that margin is I want to show you just how the formulas work if you have a changing interest rate. And I'm realizing it's a little tricky. And when I'm, again, just because the whole reason we're making them all is to do a bunch of sensitivities, like Nicholas Taleb's told them, we can do it ad infinitum. Okay, but you can do all sorts of, with refinancing, without refinancing, examine just how much upside you really get from refinancing. That's the idea. If you would want to take refinancing out, you just go up to line 80, which is the year after the COD, and put 100 years in there or something. And if you put 100 years in, this project has less life than 100 years, and the dates, it would never, the flag would never be turned on, and you can just turn it on and off like that. Or, very good. Okay, but why did that? Just a minute. Date of refinancing. What did? Oh, we were just. It's so slow now. Is that July, whatever, is that 2021, that date of the refinancing? No, I'm looking at the date of the refinancing, press F2. Did we do that right? Yeah, that's like 2125. It just doesn't tell us the year right, okay? I hope. Yeah, why don't you just so you remember to do this, control and the number 1, and then, or no, let's do something better. Go to generic macros. Oh, this is going to be dangerous. Go to the generic macros file, right click, and go and that big implement thing, and we'll just see how a macro works, and go to assign macro. And then after you go to assign macro, go to the one, oh, I can't see it. It says shortcuts. Where's the one that says shortcuts? How about just pressing edit? Just press edit. Just press edit and get kind of the list of all the macros. And and then very good, thank you. And then if you go down a little bit in that list, you should. Oh, where's the? I'm looking at the left over there. Can you find the one that says? Go down a little bit. Shortcuts, is that one that says shortcuts? No, is there?
No, I don't see it.
Just a minute. Go up to the top. I think I might have put it with an A or something. All the way.
Did this?
Yeah, that one. Okay. And then can you just do a Control F and see if you can find a date? I hope just type date. And does that work? Fine. Next. No, keep going, I think. Keep going. Yes, can you put 3 Ys in instead of 2 Ys there? So that was a very, very long, put 4 Ys. I'm sorry, 4 Ys. Okay, and then close the whole macro, close this thing. And then after you close this thing, you have to put implement.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you could probably even just click on that implement button. Okay, good. And then after you do that, let's press, remember what we did to get that date. It was, instead of Shift Control 3, it was just Control 3. So just press Control 3. Is that? Yeah. And it's 2021. I did that whole thing to show you that with on review. Okay, but that's good. That's good. Okay. All right. Enough of that. Then now let's go to the template model. And now if we have this consolidation business, the whole idea is that when you change something in the template model, then we're going to run the macro and change that E1 right at the top. It's on scenario number 1. So it's using the index function to grab things from scenario number 1. If we did scenario number 2 in a minute, we'll do that. It'll change it to scenario number 2. So let's go down. I put the refinancing kind of at the bottom there. Okay. And so we did our debt sizing and all of that. Now I'm going to do this with our when we have a monthly model and we have to aggregate the monthly model into different periods, and especially in this case, the construction period we won't care about at all, but we want to get it to kind of be semi-annual. So let's just list this out, and I haven't practiced this, but let's put the first big thing, which put the refinancing flag in here. Now, I don't know, can I ask other people, do you believe in putting all of these flags in a separate sheet? Does anybody have any strong opinions about that? I noticed that, that probably more common than not is to put all the flags in a separate sheet. And then you grab the flag from this sheet. And I just don't get that. And I found people getting frustrated by that. So I'm putting it in a different sheet. And then could you go to kind of column E, go back to column E and just put a date. And this time,
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah.
Brian, yes, I do put them in a separate sheet, but not for a particularly theoretical modeling reason. I forget and I recalculate it if I do it on different sheets. I end up doing the same flag a number of times. That's why I tend to put all my flags in one sheet, that I don't end up doing the same flag 10 times, because I forget when I do it on a calculation sheet.
Interesting. I see. Okay, yeah, very good.
Ed, for me is I only because when I want to calculate, for example, the construction flag, I need a flag for construction start date, then another flag for construction end date, and then come up with the construction flag based on those. So just for the top timeline for the construction operation, I do it in a separate page, but for the debt flags, dividend flags, I do it within the calculation of dividends when I use it. But just just the construction operation, number of days like that. Sometimes I do it in a separate sheet.
Very good. Hi, Eddie, don't get mad at me. Eddie used this wonderful term for me before, blah, blah, blah. For me, that's kind of a, okay, whatever, put the word date there. Sorry, Eddie, you're not mad at me. I used your term. Put the word date. So this is another thing, put the word date. This is, this would be illegal, just no equal sign, just the word date, because what we're going to do is get the date, and then you go forward, and remember we have a consolidation thing, so press enter there and just press shift control D, remember, on that one. And then you go, I hope I'm not screwing it up, and then you go put equal index. And what you do is you put equal index and you go to that input C page, and you get all the dates across. I suppose let's just start in column I this time and go. What I would do there, and Brian, I'm curious about what you're going to say now. Press shift control right arrow 2 times, not 1 time, 2 times. One more, all the way to the end. And my position is that doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't slow the Excel down. It doesn't do anything bad. Put a comma. And the way I test that is I make like a 1,000-line model, take one thing, copy it 1,000 times, and put one of these timing tests in there. Okay, maybe Brian, you can say if you disagree. I totally want you to disagree. Then go to the template model. Go back to that E1. It's E1. And what you're doing there is you're saying, okay, we're taking this model and allowing it to do different refinancing in different dates. Press enter. So that's our date, and that's the big thing. And then, oh no, I'm sorry, no comma at the end. And sometimes Excel puts a little, and then control 3, right? Is that what we did? Okay, good. Oh, now it's got and then you go forward and you just take, since you notice I use the beginning of the month. If you want to use the end of the month, another thing for me that just doesn't matter very much, but you can do the end of the month, put an equal sign, go up to K number 3, or to whatever, the date, I'm sorry, I couldn't see, and then put an equal sign and just make a flag like you always do, and go back to F there and press F4 and then press enter and then shift control B to make it into a 1 or a 0. Again, that's very controversial. Everybody else would put a little if statement and waste all that time. And I don't know why it's so slow. We might shift control R. If it's taking too long, maybe it's because I did that little index thing, but I don't think so. It's just because the model is getting really big. So you can see we had 1, and Hetty would make me do a sum column in H. I never used to do the sum columns. I think that's enormous. So you go back to column H and put in that same line and put shift control V for Victor in that whoops, right there in H198. Okay, so we need that. No, just shift control V for Victor. Take that thing away. Take that away. Just delete shift control V. So we that's just a shortcut from generic macros. Okay. Then after that, let's put I suppose what we could do is just a minute. I'm now. Can you go back to input C? I did something really badly. Okay, could you go add one line all the way at the bottom just a minute, in 87, I'm sorry, in line 87. Would you mind inserting a line and calling the maturity date? And I'm going to use the beginning of the month instead of the end date, and just put that as a date, and then just use your let's use the e-date function, and take for the e-date, go up to the date of the refinancing in 1 July 2027 and put a comma, and then go up to that 31 and multiply that by, nope, 31, because that's got the tail end, and multiply that by months. Of course, you could do it 20 different ways. Shift control 3, right? To get that to be a date. Okay, and why don't you just drag that manually right now? Don't use Shift Control R, and maybe, or did you just use Shift, whatever you did? Good.
Sorry about that. Yeah, use Shift Control R.
Oh, and that time it worked fast. The last time it didn't. Good. Let's go back to the template model. And in the template model, let's put repayment flag. And this, for me, is a really big deal, because and put date again, Control D, just to get it down, or down, just okay. And then put an equal sign and get that from input C. Of course, that's going to be a blue number. Okay, and that's, oh no, I did it wrong again. Escape, put equal index. Oh, I'm so sorry. Every single time we do this, if we have one of these consolidated models, you have to and go to that one, and not the whole line this time. I'm sorry, I just did it with that one, because remember, I used the number 1 up in E1. Okay. Yep. Okay, and you press that one. Very good. Shift Control 3. Okay, and so now I suppose what some people would do, let's do this. This is, I don't know what the rules are, and I go crazy with the rules, you can tell, but go to G199 and just put equal, back to G, put the start date. So we're putting the end date. We should have maybe go up 1 and back 1 to that one, this one. But when you do that, let's not do it like that, really. The first repayment is going to occur if we issue the debt in 1 July, we got to count on our fingers. When will the first repayment occur? The first repayment will occur just I gotta, so we'll have it in July, August, September, October, November, December. I think you have to add 5, put for that 1 July 2027, put E date of that one and put 5. So and I always get this, if you use the end of the month or the beginning of the month, you might use 6 if it was the end of the month, and so you can do it also, but put 5. I make that mistake so much, I can't. And then you go forward right now and just use the and thing as usual. And you can see by now we're just repeating a whole bunch of stuff. And since everything was the first, you put and that, and then greater than or equal the second one. I'm sorry, greater than or equal, and then put a whatever comma, and then go up to that one. Nope, the top one again, because everything's based on the first of the month. So yep. Do and then less than. It's not less than or equal, but less than. And you can go to that first date. Now, you could have done this 100 different ways, and frankly, who cares? Press F4, press Enter, Shift Control B. Oh, very good. Oh, very good. Thanks. And then Shift Control B, and then Shift Control R. And when we do that, now we're going to have a bunch of months. Let's do this pretending incorrectly. Let's do this pretending that we have we're paying the debt off every month, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. And I think I probably got it wrong, because if you take that 367 and divide that by 12, what does that give? You can see how Hetty's example thing, it's 30.5. If you shoot, what's our tenor?
33.
I'm sorry, I think it was 31.
31, I beg your pardon.
Put less than or equal to, and if it doesn't work, so in the end, put less than or equal to. This is the kind of mistake I would make, but then we don't have the first. No, I was wrong. Leave it less than, and put greater. You put greater than or equal to. Can you make that first date, instead of 5 months, can you make it 6 months? So in that 127, I hope I'm going to get 30.5. That's what we should get, because we didn't start repaying it until kind of whatever, 6 months after it. Or was it right? No, it was right the first time. It's not 30.5 months. It was right the first time, because 1 month is 8. Leave it as change it back. I am sorry about that, but that's a kind of real world problem. Change it to 5.
So can I understand? Is the intention here that you first make a repayment in the month of December 27? Is that when you're making the first repayment?
Yeah, and I should have maybe, because now I'm doing it even worse. Let's just for now put 1 there instead of 5. Put 1 instead of 5, because I said we're going to pretend it's repaid every single year. And then just a minute, then we have 1 month too little. So I think go and make it. Did you put less than or equal to on the end? Put less than or equal to on the end. And I'm going to lie to you and say, oh, I made that mistake on purpose. And then, okay, did you copy it across? Oh,
Yeah.
you're doing, okay. Then we have to, finally, sorry about that, but okay, that's the real world. That's okay. Now let's go down. Okay, and maybe this time, yeah, that's kind of interesting where you should put that test in. Okay, these are the kind of mistakes, by the way, I find I make a lot. What we're going to do is compute the debt size at first. To compute the debt size, let's just write down what we need. We need the CFADS monthly. Put the CFADS monthly, and later we're going to convert this to semi-annually, but let's just get the whole thing right first. And then below that, let's just put the titles in. Below that, put the DSCR for refinancing in there. So that's what we made. And then put below that, put the interest rate. And how about, let's do it like this. Let's put the annual interest rate so we can be a little more transparent. Okay. And then below the annual interest rate, put a periodic interest rate. And then for me, this next one is the key. I'll put an interest rate index. And that interest rate index cannot be, that's where we're going to start with number 1, but we're going to only start with 1 at the repayment date. We're not going to start with 1 at the beginning. And then we're going to gradually increase it. And just to be a little more transparent, put the interest rate PV factor. Okay, what I do is I divide instead of multiply. And then we can put below there the amount of, we can put the amount of refinancing I'm sorry, below that, we can put the debt size at refinancing. Sorry, debt size at refinancing. Okay, and that's going to be the sum product, or yeah, that's what we'll use. We'll just use the sum product. Okay, and so we can, what the nice thing about this, I hope you can see that we could get the debt size for any of these different scenarios. If we put, can you just go up to E1 just for a minute and put number 2 there instead of 1? So I hope I did something else and then it gave a different refinancing date, a different repayment date, and all of that stuff. Go put it back to 1, I suppose. We'll do that. Okay, and then you go down, so you have the debt size, and once you have.
Quick question: is there a reason why we don't use this drop-down menu?
Yes, because we're doing this consolidation. In fact, right-click and delete that. And cut it, because right now the way this template thing worked is we take this one, copy it, and every time we're copying, we're changing E number 2 to 1 to 2 to 3. That's very, very different, and the macro only works this way because what we have to do is make a new sheet each time, and in each new sheet, then we'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how we did that, and that's the mistake I made the first time. So then you go down. I think just like any debt schedule, skip a line down and put opening balance, and then and then below the opening balance, we'll put the debt issued at refinancing, which is just the debt size, but we're going to multiply that debt size by that refinancing flag. So it was crucial to have that refinancing flag. Okay, and then put, we have the DSCR for refinancing. Can you in line 202 change that to debt service for refinancing? I always I'm sorry. We're going to take the CFADS divided by the debt DSCR to get the debt service. I hope we won't have any negative numbers or anything there, but then go down. So we'll take the debt service minus the interest, and that's going to be our repayment. So right now you can put repayment and then put closing balance and then interest. Okay. And then, oh my gosh. I put the right number of lines in there. I totally had no idea, and maybe I didn't. I'm sure we'll need an extra a line in a little while. Now, if you go up to 191, okay, you see it says no, keep going up. The basic debt. That keep going up. We have to find our first debt issue, which we're going to refinance. And down there, I left it blank in 171. So what we're going to do there is put the less debt repaid at refinancing. Now, if you had a model with like Hetty did with 4 different debt issues and all that, well, you might have to put a little flag which one you're going to refinance, or maybe you'll refinance all of them, or 2 of them, or something like that. And yeah, we're just a minute. So very good. Yeah, very good. Just go down 1 and press Control D. Just go up 1, shift right. No, just for those 2 at the beginning. Go down 1, down. Sorry. Oh, you had it right there. Shift 1, shift right 1, and then Control D. Okay, Josh, your attitude is so good. And so we're going to fill that in. That's just going to be that refinancing flag multiplied by the opening balance minus this. Let's not even do any formulas yet, Josh. Let's do that in a minute. I just want you to visualize how this whole thing works. So just delete that for now, okay? And then after you do this, could you go down? Keep going down, and then keep going down on the cash flow waterfall. Okay, so what's going to happen is we have, right now, we have debt service. I put a space there, but could you go down one and insert a line and put a less debt service on refinance debt and change that title above? So we have debt service on the original debt, and then we'll have debt service on the refinance debt. Okay, and very good. I hope that's all okay. And then we're not quite finished. Go into line 228 and insert, just go one line below there, one line below maybe. Insert two different lines. Okay, is it taking a long time to insert? I'm sorry. And maybe, I don't know, it's good you have the calculation button on, and this maybe I can tell you what slows me down sometimes. That's really silly. If you go, can you go back to input C for just a minute? And then go to conditional formatting. Go to home and conditional formatting right there. And in that conditional formatting, put manage rules all the way at the bottom. And when you do the manage rules, can you put up there where it says current selection, put worksheet? You see that? And yep. And then can you kind of make it bigger? Let's see how many conditional formatting things we have. We have when you have that many conditional formatting, Brian maybe can explain why that screws you up. We'd have to delete and kind of redo some of our conditional formatting, particularly that funny one up there with the and. I'm just saying that can slow you down when you're inserting lines. Let's close this for now, though. That's just, for me, that's the first. If I see the Excel as being slow, that's kind of the first. Just close this.
So without deleting?
Not for now. That's not. I'm afraid to. Sorry. Go to the template model. Very good. So then after the two lines you're going to use, that was the insert problem. Put less repayment of initial debt, and then below that, you put the big one of initial debt, and then put add I'm sorry, proceeds from refinance debt. Now, can I ask you something? I don't know. If you set it up like this, first of all, I don't know. I would, for me, this is just kind of a teaching question for you. I want you to see where we're going. I want you to see where we're going and fill in kind of the titles before we do this. And I suspect that I could, I'm just theoretically, I could say, okay, go, Josh, go do this, the rest of this yourself. And it would be a pain. And I'm not sure how I should ever do this, but this is a little more difficult. So but I'm just saying, maybe I should do that sometimes. All right, let's go and fill this in. Okay, that's the easier part, filling it in. Once you and the equity IRR should kind of skyrocket. Okay, I don't know. Can you go up for a minute and let's look at the initial financing. In the initial financing, see where it says 80%. Oh, up. See where it says 80%. And then it says, I put a little thing where it says debt applied, and the debt applied is from the DSCR. How about this? No, go down. It was right where you were looking. It was right where you were looking. Okay, let's just keep going down. And then do you see? Oh, stop there. Just a minute. And the reason, if you look at the top, we've got an IRR. This is a project IRR in G1 of 7%. Now, right now, that 7% had a PV of debt service. Where is the PV of the debt service? Find that for me. PV of 294, but the 80/20, so that was a lower amount. So that's what was selected. Go to the input C case, and let's make what Hetty talked about, which is more common maybe in Africa. Go up to the price. Go way up to the price of the and for that price right now we have only 2.14 cents. Put 0.03. No, put 0.025. That 0.03. That's going to be much higher. So just type in right there, and then go to the.
Do you want me to keep it for case one or?
Just case one,
Okay.
because we're on case one. And go to the template model. And now when you increase the price, notice the IRR is 15%. If I see an IRR like that, basically, I would say you're stealing from people, and that's an unrealistic kind of number. But you see that now the debt to capital is the constraint, because the cash flow went up so high. We got 704 in line 134 versus whatever it was in line 137. We constrained that because the total amount of the funding needs up there, we have that somewhere, I don't know where. Yeah, right, the funding requirements was 432, so we're issuing more debt than funding, and we have to constrain it. Let's put 0.02 instead of 0.025. That I was too extreme, but I hope that you can see, and now, so what we're going to be able to do is, if you put 0.02 there and you go to the template model, now, oops, we have to wait to recalculate, right? Okay, and now we're constraining. Now it's still high. Let's leave it. We're constraining the debt to 80%. But if you go down, this is the whole idea of refinancing. So if you go down to the debt schedule a little bit, keep going down a little, stop there, see the debt, that you see the amount of debt in line 169 and 170. We issued that much debt and we refinance. Now, if you have a refinancing, you're going to say, oh, Mr. Banker, don't look at any stupid old project cost analysis. Look at what project finance is all about, which is cash flow. And say your whole business is to see how stable this cash flow is, and the DSCR is based on the cash flow, and that's true project finance. This debt to capital constraint was kind of an extra little thing we put in there. I'm being a little radical right now. But if you go down, now when we do our debt size, we can, after we refinance and prove our cash flow, we can refinance based on that cash flow rather than the debt size. So now we're going to switch back to kind of the DSCR method when we do the refinancing. So let's go down. Oh, Josh, this was turned out for me to be a lot more interesting. A lot.
Sorry,
more interesting. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just one question around that, right? Because if you constrain your debt sizing by a debt to capital ratio and nothing else changes, assuming that you've actually got, let's assume for a second, you've got more CFADs, so your DSCR based debt sculpting is, let's say, 80, and you constrain yourself to a debt to capital ratio and you can only borrow against, let's say, 70. By virtue of that, the very, very first opportunity you get, literally the very first one, all things being equal, you should refinance.
Totally. And that's why you see refinancing. I went in my project, we did refinancing in the construction period, but that's a different story. But you ask people when they want to refinance 1 or 2 years out. You still have to prove your cash flow. for me, I would say, you know, and who knows, in Africa, maybe it takes a little longer to prove your cash flow, and maybe, you know, sometimes it doesn't prove out, but that's exactly right. It's all mathematically, always do it as early as you possibly can. That was a great point, actually. So, and then the effects are almost too dramatic, and we'll see this in a minute. How about putting it now? What we're going to do is something a little bit inconsistent, but where the timing is okay. I won't get to the UDF, which is totally fine. Put K. I've wanted to do this for 3 weeks. Go to column K and let's find the CFADS. Now, just if you go up, hang on. No, don't do it this way. Go up because we're doing it month by month. Sorry, keep going up a little higher. Can you slow CFADS from EBITDA? So that does month by month. The reason I'm doing that is I had all those little problems. Press enter. We'll consolidate that up and make it more realistic in semi-annual basis. Can you we can copy it later. Let's copy it later. So now let's go down and on the units, go all the way back to column E. We'll put DSCR as the units. And this is very controversial because other people would put DSCR in one line and then debt service in the next line. So just put times, just put a times sign, an X for DSCR, no equal sign, just an X, and then put put an equal sign. We'll do the Shift Control D later. Go to the input C and get our, oh no, you can't do it like this. Escape again. Whoa, one more time, equal index. Sorry about that. And then go and select all those DSCRs for the refinancing, not the DSCR for the main one. So go to input C and get all of those. Very good. Excuse me. Does that work? Okay. What's going on?
Let's try again.
Try again. Oh, there you go. Excuse me. Could you put just a comma there? Go up to the number 1. Okay. I think it's just a big model.
Ed, can I ask you something on the refinancing? You know, I was just thinking in the for the tariff setting, you know, we never use like, or do they? Because in the project that I worked, refinancing was never considered in the base case for the tariff setting. So is that something that you have seen? It's possible to have refinancing while negotiating the tariff? So the target IRR will be including refinancing?
I see. I might have to get some water here in a second. I see and I hate this. Well, I don't care about that. Why would I care? That if you have a refinancing, you have to adjust the tariff. I think that's more and more common, and it's probably not done in Africa as much. And I think the history of this would be on a toll road or a bridge. There was this famous bridge in Netherlands, and the traffic was much higher, not much lower, much higher than expected. The company was doing fantastically, and then they immediately refinanced, and the IRR went through the roof. And after that, they said, okay, and by the way, traffic deals are really hard, but if you do a refinancing, you're going to have to give half of the benefits of the refinancing to the consumers, and the shareholders get half. And now, is that okay, Hattie? I
Perfect.
don't know.
Thanks, Ed. That's perfect. Thank you.
Go down and And it really, why did it not take? What happened here? Let's try it one more time and then maybe give up. Index, and then I don't understand why it was working before, but it doesn't click now. Why is that not? And shift right, if you, it just shift right, right? Okay, and then put a comma, let's stop there, that's fine. And then go to that one. Oh, okay. Who knows? I think that's what you did before. When I have that, I just don't ask any questions. So let's go down, now go across and put an equal sign, take that one above and just divide that by the 1.2. And that's an F4. You know, that's why we put two different units. We put the unit at the X and then the unit on I. And that's all style stuff. Shift Control R. Who knows it? I just don't, I hope you don't get too excited about that. Let's now go to the interest rate and let's leave it for now as a flat interest rate. So let's go to line 203 and just put a percent. How about let's just get that interest rate. Okay, yeah, yes. If you want, put a percent, good, and then put very good. Okay, I hope this is about the last time we're going to have to do this. Although, oh no, okay, let's cheat on this one. I'm going to cheat. Escape. Just take the interest rate of 4% plus the 1. Let's pretend everybody's got the same rate. So put an equal sign, okay. No, we can't do that. That's just that. I think in terms of these best practices, I hate the word best practices, but I can say what's a worst practice. You can't do that. Okay, that was too much. Josh, sorry, I got a little heart attack. Go to input C and let's just take the whatever the 1% margin plus the 4% base rate. So just do that one for now. Obviously we can put in, and then how about this? Go forward and take that rate and divide it by the number of months. Now I should escape, do that in column G. Let's go to column G. The theoretically right way to do this would be to take the 360 days and you take the number of days up there, and it's not hard, but for now, and you do a interest rate based on 360 days or whatever the term sheet says. Shift Control P, and now let's just copy that all the way to the thing. Okay, but I hope we have time in just a minute here. If we don't, it doesn't matter really. Press Enter, Shift Control R. And then now we're going to do the big one. And then we're going to start this interest rate index. How about go to J? And Brian laughed at me about this. Go to J. I was kind of serious. Put equal 1, O-N-E. Put equal O-N-E. But because then if you have our little coloring, it won't color that as an input. And then you put an equal sign and go back to the 1. And I really do this in multiply it, not add, multiply it, and open the bracket, 1 plus, go up 1, but you're not finished. And then inside the bracket, multiply it by that repayment flag. That's why that repayment flag is in any debt issue is absolutely crucial. Press Enter. And then Shift Control R. So we're not going to start our, so very good. And let's just kind of look across and see what happened to this. If you go forward, we don't start doing this. And then so let's go back. We have I just want to see the date we start. So in that back one, back in that's when we issue that, see the flag up there? The flag that's when we issue, and then we start counting the period when we start the repayment. You see, we started the repayment 1 month after that. Okay, and now let's go. Now let's just put a reciprocal of that, go all the way back to the beginning and just put 1 divided by that. You can then put it equal 1. Put equal 1 divided by that number. Not there. Oh yeah, you can. Okay, you can do that too. Divide it, but we don't have to do anything. Just 1 divided by that number. Equal 1. Sorry, Josh. Just equal 1 and then divide by the number 1 above. But very good. Press Shift Control R. So that's our kind of PV factor. And it has to compound. The PV factor could never be 1 divided by 1 plus the interest rate raised to the power. That would not work. It wouldn't remember what you changed before. I have to think about that a little bit better. And now we can compute the debt size. To compute the debt size, let's stick it in column F. The debt size or did I miss something? Why? I put just a minute. That was supposed to be okay. I'm missing the lines. Just line 20. What was line? I didn't. Could you just move those 3 titles up 1? We didn't do the periodic interest rate. Go. So just move those. Yeah, very good. Just move those up 1. Thank you. And then let's compute our amount of refinancing, which is just some product. Okay, and because we put all those 1s in there, it's no big deal. Go forward and start down to the. Yes, you were right. Get the CFADS monthly up and down. Oh, yes. The debt service monthly. What an idiot. Sorry. It's always PV of debt service. Sorry, Josh. And multiply that by our interest rate index. Very good. Go forward. And that you can multiply, but be careful. You have to go down 1. If you're multiplying it's the PV factor. That's why we divide it. So it's.
Wouldn't I have to divide then by 20?
You can divide or go down 1 and just multiply it. Just take 205. I'm just, and the whole line.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Okay. And that's the big, I cannot believe you could have used a goal seek to do this kind of thing and go down and do our debt schedule and make the goal seek work until the closing balance is 0. But can you imagine every time you do another scenario, you have to press the goal seek, and it's just so much less elegant, I think. Now go down and let's go down to the debt issued at refinancing and put an equal sign and just get that same number. Now, I don't know why. I bet you some people would think that's illegal to kind of do that. Redo this. I can't see why, but whatever. And then go to the opening balance and make the opening balance equal the prior period closing balance. And then press enter. And then for the next one, put an equal sign, take that total debt issued and multiply it by our repayment flag. Okay, and that's that first a refinancing flag. I said it wrong. Sorry. And then for the repayment, just like we always do, did you lock it right? Put an equal sign. Take the debt service in line 202. And subtract the interest, which we haven't computed yet, but don't worry that we haven't computed it, from below. And then the closing balance, just like we've been doing, is the opening balance plus the issue minus the repayment. I'm leaving everything as a positive. That might be controversial too. I don't really care about all that stuff. You might. Shift Control W maybe, or and then go down and compute the interest and use that why, just a minute. Hang on, the closing balance, there's something wrong with the closing balance, Jess, because, no, there's something wrong with the repayment. What, oh, of course I made a mistake. No, go up, no, how critical. I was hoping you would catch this. Just kidding. Go to the CFADS monthly, and just that should be multiplied by that repayment flag, because we're just taking the CFADS over the repayment. We don't, that's it. That's where it all comes from. I'm so sorry about that. And then we get a different amount. And then, so for the interest, it's the opening balance multiplied by and if we use the opening balance, multiplied by the interest rate index up there. Okay. The up there. No, I meant the interest rate. Sorry, I meant the interest rate. Okay. And then we copy that across. Okay. And go forward. And if you, so then the big test is, let's go and tell me what you check. I literally just run to the closing balance and make sure that closing balance went to 0 at the end of the repayment period. Okay. By the way, Hetty, good. That's 0. That is 0. We can do our formatting. How about, let's do the formatting. Let's select all the whole block, up, down, and you shift control W maybe just to, okay. And that's beautiful. For me, that's when I see that, that's a thing of beauty. And I can tell you something. When I used to do this, I used to never get it right. And we could have put a change in the interest rate and it still would have worked. We could have put a different date in and it still would have worked. Everything is fine. And now we've got a couple of easy things to do to finish it up. Let's go up to the original debt schedule and go all the way up and no, down a little, just keep going down. There it is. Do you see? For the repayment at refinancing, how about going into column F and just putting an equal sign and get that debt size from the refinancing? And the whole thing about refinancing is using that NPV formula. And then, yeah, just wait. It's okay, good. And I think what you're doing right, by the way, instead of putting F1, F9, all that, that's a company name. Put an equal sign, take that number. Actually, no, don't do it like that. Delete that. What an idiot I am. I'm sorry, escape. Delete that number in F. We don't need that. We're going to just repay this debt. What you're going to do is, so just delete that number. Sorry, I was wrong. Go forward and take the opening balance, put an equal sign, open the bracket, take the opening balance, put a bracket there, because we're going to take the opening balance. And theoretically, I suppose you could put plus the debt issued, but that would never happen. Go ahead and put a plus on the debt issued minus the debt repaid. You can't take the closing balance. And then close that bracket and multiply that by that debt refinancing flag down there. So go, not that you know what I mean, go down to our refinancing section and just take that up there, that refinancing flag. I don't know from a style point of view if you should put the flag upstairs again or somewhere, but now you copy that, and then after you copy it, go to the closing balance and make sure that closing balance subtracts the amount on the refinancing. So we need to put very good. Where was our refinancing? I think it was earlier even, wasn't it?
In 27.
It better be. Where was, I'm looking at that refinancing flag. And I
Refinancing
thought,
was in 27, July
so
27.
why didn't
Yeah.
it work?
Yeah.
Oh, there, good. So then just go to the closing balance and make sure that you just subtract that amount you paid off. You're paying off the debt. Now you could also put fees here, by the way. Do the all the way across. Just use the same formula. Of course, we could have put some fees on the refinancing. That would have been really kind of easy. So go all the way back to the column I or whatever we started with, or K or whatever. Found that closing balance in 172 and just adjust that closing balance formula and put a minus on the put a minus on the repayment. Okay. Press enter and shift control R. Good. So that debt goes away. And basically what we're doing now is we're repaying. Oh, I think that's okay. So if you go forward, I'm sorry, the debt repaid, we should, I guess, why is that, what did we use? I guess we could do two things. We could put a minimum of the opening balance. That would be the common, or you could also put so let's go all the way to the beginning and put a minimum in there. So just right at the beginning. And the reason that if statement was there is because of the consolidation from the monthly to the press enter and copy that across. I hope that's not gonna, that might mess up. We might get a circular reference because of that. No, okay, I hope we didn't. Okay, so very good. Those are real world things. Now let's go down and finish it off. Now we go all the way down. Okay. And in the we've done that. You go all the way down to the cash flow waterfall. Okay, and in the cash flow waterfall, you put an equal sign and take the debt service on the refinanced debt, which, if you had multiple refinancings, you can see we'd have to do the same kind of thing on this, put another refinancing thing and all that. But very good. Oh, good. You did it like that. I think that's better than just taking the first one. Okay, copy that. Good. And then make sure that you adjust in line 226. After you do that, you adjust the subtotal in line 226. So just put a minus on the one you just computed. Okay. Good. Very good. Okay, copy that one. Did you copy it? I'm not sure you. Okay. And then we've got to do the last two things, which you go down. Okay. And in the you go to the repayment of default. No. Where's the payment of the initial debt? And that's just from that debt schedule way up at the top. And here, you could argue that you could put that as a negative, but let's just leave it as a positive. So you put an equal sign. That's just what you computed, Josh, up on that original debt schedule. Okay, and there it was. No, in line one. Very good. One more down. We got the debt service pay computed, but we didn't put in that refinancing. And then you put in then you do the very last thing. that you put an equal sign and go up to the wherever I think go up to the debt schedule on the refinancing and get how much more money you get to put in your pocket from all that refinancing. Very good. You got the idea, press enter. Okay. So really a whole bunch of this stuff was just, and then make sure the dividends are subtract the amount that you had to repay. You just think what comes out of my pocket and what goes back in, and add the amount of debt you get from the refinancing. And we've done it. And then Shift Control R. Now, if you now, can you go down and see what the equity IRR is? It might be so high it's hardly keep going down. Somewhere down there we computed the equity IRR. 108. Okay. So that was a little bit high. Let's take our refinancing out. Let's go to input C. Without refinancing, it was really high too, because I put a much higher, price in there. But go down, remember we can put 100 years in there and take it out. So that 2, change that to 100. Okay, and then we've got to wait for a minute. Is it computing? Come on. Okay, it was too high. Let's not make it quite as aggressive. Let's put the price to be lower. We still got an 11% IRR. Can you see just how dramatic? It's almost too much. And Hetty, that's why, you have to share maybe the benefits of refinancing sometimes. That's what they want you to do. Go to the input C page and let's change that price to make it a little bit lower. And in fact, let's put our original price, which was 0.014 up there. And that's kind of interesting. And what we said at the end of the day, I don't know if I see it in these. So then it was 9%. This was without refinancing, and let's put our refinancing back in there. And this was for me, there are 2 upsides the investors get. One is selling the project early at a low discount rate. I don't know what happened to the debt cash flow. That's because we'd have to put in, but you can see just how dramatic this is. Let's answer Brian's question. Let's say we refinance this instead of in year 2. Let's refinance this in year 7 or something like that. So go to input C and change the 2 to a 7. Okay, and just 1 minute. Okay, so it's always much better to do it as fast as possible. And then what you really want to do is you want to refinance and refinance and refinance. Maybe, although the benefits kind of after you get that initial benefits, the next ones wouldn't be nearly as much. You could maybe shorten the tail a little bit. You could maybe even get a better interest rate if that interest rate spiked up. And I'll tell you what we haven't done. We have not done this business of remember, can you just go up to the initial refinancing? Can you go up to the initial, not refinancing, the initial financing? Okay. And if you go, yeah, right there. If you notice what I did, you see where it says CFADS over repayment? And if you can just go a little bit forward, Josh, I think. Go forward. And can you see that was accumulated? Can you press control square bracket? Does that work on a UK keyboard to find where that came from? Go up to that one. And where is that? Go up maybe a couple more lines. What we did there is we made the CFADS month by month by month. And then we had that repayment counter that I can just see in line 116. And so for the CFADS in line 122, go down to 122, we made the CFADS accumulate over 6-month periods, and we used that sum if multiplied by the flag. And I think I used to do it with offset, and I hate, that offset drives me crazy. This is so much simpler, and all you have to do is just get used to saying the sum if across that counter period, and then you multiply it by the flag. It is so much faster. And then you do the same thing with the target. Now the target debt service down there, we do the same thing. We sum it across the months. And then if you go down, we had the, why did I have the target debt service? Maybe I just did that. And then I put the periodic rate, but then summed the periodic rate over the 6-month periods. That's what we did down there. And the PV factor had to use the sum. And if you keep going down a little bit and find that, keep going down, and you'll find this time this time we're using the debt to capital. But if you keep going down to the debt schedule, you'll see that the debt gets repaid each 6-month period. Okay, see, it gets repaid at a 6-month period, and the interest also occurs at a 6-month period. And Josh, keep going to the end to make sure that debt goes all the way down to 0. That's your big test. Okay, and keep going. Okay, there we go. It went down to 0. Okay, and so we theoretically should have done that refinancing because we had this monthly model. And I'm gonna, Josh, if you promise to send me the file, I'm gonna fix a couple of those little things. I think we have to fix the interest rate a little bit too, but I hope you get the idea. Now, the one thing we don't have, which is a really big deal, if you go down to the CFADS for refinancing, go down to the refinancing, okay, and in that, keep going down. No, I'm sorry, stay up there. CFADS monthly. What we should have done is that CFADS right now does not have taxes in it. If the CFADS had taxes in it, it gets more complicated, because then we would have to take that CFADS, subtract the taxes, but the taxes now are affected by the refinancing, and we would have had to compute a little tax schedule for CFADS purposes. And remember, you asked about that P90 and all that stuff, which was really a good question. But that, the tax would have to reflect the interest on the refinancing, not the old interest. And then if the taxes are affected by the interest, but the CFADS, the debt gives you the interest, and the debt is affected by the CFADS. My circular, your head starts going in circles, because it is a circular reference. So then you either throw that tax thing way down in that copy and paste block, or I wanted to show you how to do it with this UDF. So we didn't have the taxes might be the hardest part of this whole thing, but the fundamental parts of getting the refinancing in there are pretty straightforward. And I think I'm going to stop, because I think after 2 hours it's just torture. And Josh, thank you so much, mainly for asking the question. Really, and that's why, let me stop. Does anybody, if you can either talk now or think about what kind of, how you want to move forward. I love some of the comments. That's why I started with that big list of things to do, and I don't think I talked about including actuals in these kind of models, which can be really, really painful. So I'm stopping now.
Sorry, Ed, I have a question quickly.
Please, Brian, you don't have to, you just jump in and you help teach the class, Brian, really. I so much appreciate it.
I wanted to run something by you in this respect, especially, and let's ignore the UDF method for just a second and say we were following a copy and paste approach, right? If we are sizing the debt using the CFADS method, I fully agree that there's a circularity with respect to tax, right? But is the most efficient method to copy and paste the tax cash flow, or to rather copy and paste the CFADS? And let me clarify why I'm asking that question. If you have another fee within the context of this debt, let's say you have a fee on the undrawn facility, that would also affect the CFADS, right? And that's not encapsulated by copying and pasting the taxes. However, if you copy and paste the CFADS, you also break every circularity that relates to anything that's in the CFADS. What are your thoughts about that?
I haven't thought about it, right? But I totally agree. And I think Hetty told me that a long time ago. Basically, the two things you can do to break the circularity are the financing requirements. That's the pre-COD that includes all the IDC and the CFADS, the CFADS. Those two are the big ones. You break those two, and what I'm thinking about then is this. If you go, can you just go, Josh? Just see it says CFADS monthly. I think, and that would be kind of semi-annual when we fix it. And that one, we started there. We would have to have some CFADS that has both the kind of pre the refinancing and after the refinancing. There'd have to be some. The CFADS would be affected by the refinancing itself, but I think if we put that CFADS would change, and Josh is stepping on the right number. Before that, the CFADS would have a circular reference from taxes in the original one. So that's why I think I agree with you. And the tax calculation would be somewhere. How about this? Can you go down to line 213 and just add maybe 5 lines? I hope that doesn't take too long, and put income taxes. So that income taxes would be computed kind of after the the refinancing and if you had 4 refinancings, you should do that. And I guess, why don't you do this? That's great, Jess. Just go down one and put EBITDA maybe, and then put less depreciation, and that depreciation would have to include depreciation on the fees and everything else, and then put EBIT, and then below there insert a couple more lines, and then you have to put interest. And the interest, if just to illustrate, you'd put interest on the original financing. I have to admit, I've never done this. And interest on the refinance debt. And then you put EBT, and then you could put all your NOL stuff down and everything else, but then you'd put, NOL stuff. How's that? NOL stuff, and then you put taxes. That's fine. And then you can almost see the circularity, because then the CFADS is I guess, Brian, maybe that's what we could do, is go down to the after that and put CFADS, and the CFADS would just be maybe just put CFADS there, and then below there put EBITDA, and then what you would do is insert a couple of lines. Whoops. Oh, that's because of my thing. And put we'd have to. How about working capital changes? Because people tend to be obsessed with that. And then you could put, and Brian, I have a question for you now. Would you put fees on the refinancing? Would you take those fees? I think you probably would. Put fees
I
on.
can't see how you wouldn't, right? Because otherwise your
Yeah,
debt size is too high in relation to the fees you'd still need to pay on, let's say, the undrawn facility.
And the undrawn facility, you mean the new refinanced facility?
The new refinanced undrawn facility. Yeah.
What, I mean, you could even put breakage fees on the
Yes,
initial debt.
Yeah.
And
It needs to be anything excluded from the CFADS that you don't have access to and need to pay away even when you get the
Right.
debt, right?
Absolutely. So how about just, Josh, just so everybody sees, put breakage fees on initial debt, which often would be zero. So sometimes that you'd have those, and then you'd put fees on new debt. Now, there could also be if there were. This is just the fees at the transaction. If there are fees after if they're like agent fees and all these things,
Yeah.
I think that goes into debt service, not in CFADS, but that depends on how the CFADS is defined in the term sheet and all that. So you could put the fees as part of debt service, which I think they are, or you could put the fees as a subtraction of CFADS. But right now, just put CFADS. So I think that was Brian's kind of point that you don't, if you just did the taxes, those breakage fees and all that. Oh, did we put taxes? Yeah, put less taxes. I'm sorry. No, down in that one. Go down. That the taxes are taken out of the CFADS, and then put CFADS at the bottom. Okay. All right. And it's still, for me, it's people tend to get intimidated by this. And I've seen these models, and Brian has seen this, I think, where you have this whole sheet with refinancing, without refinancing. You add a few lines at the bottom and it's not that big a deal. And then we can do that thing that Josh just did, where we changed it to 100 and do all our sensitivities and just put it a couple of extra lines down in that cash flow waterfall. And it's not that big a deal, but conceptually, it's an enormous issue. And it really illustrates for me that project finance is almost like convertible debt. The equity you've got the base equity you're earning, and then you've got these upsides that you get that you don't have to refinance. It's like an option to refinance. If things get bad, you're not going to refinance because you're lucky you got that first refinancing done. If things get good, you're going to go out and refinance, and you have these upsides that can be pretty extreme. And that's the other big upside, I'm repeating myself, is the upside from selling the asset, because the risk has gone down, and they're in a way they're both related to exactly the same thing. Now, I guess you could put refinancing and selling the asset. I don't know if I haven't thought about that enough, but okay. Thanks, Brian. Any other big points? That was good.
And if the point is that this introduces circular references and that one way of doing it is copy and paste, how much easier or efficient is a user-defined function?
It's harder. Okay, it's a lot harder. Can you go down?
Mm-hmm.
Can you go down and keep going? So I put a user-defined function in here. If you go down, keep going down, I put a circular reference block. Right-click on that circular macro. Right-click on that one. And I was going to take you through some of this. Press assign macro and then press edit. Okay. And then that's the copy and paste. And that's why everybody does it. It's so easy. It's ridiculous. Anybody who's proud of a project, circular copy and paste, what should we do to them, Eddie? I don't know. You can't be proud of that, but you are. The first time you do it, you're very proud of it. Okay, and then you say, all we got to do is put a little difference and go around it. And then if you go down, that IDC calculation is a little more complicated. I had to make a little dimension. Don't even worry about what it is. I'm just showing you. Keep going down. So, Josh, you asked two questions, which were very, keep going down. And then it kind of starts looking at do until it looks, but you have to kind of redo the Excel stuff. So it takes a few lines, and for me, it's taken years, and every time I do it, I make a mistake. I have to admit it, keep going down. You're just about finished there. Okay, that's the end of the function. So that gives you an idea of what you have to do. Hopefully, you can have this friend of Brian, Mr. Hatmaker, I think his name is. He suggests making a whole bunch of little lambda functions that you can just grab, so you could have this pre-built. But Josh, your question was very different. Number one, you asked which is easier. Number two, you asked which is efficient.
No, I said which is efficient, number one, and which one is, I guess, yeah, efficient is the main question.
I argue that efficiency in terms of the time it takes, which is becoming a much, much bigger issue in all sorts of modeling, including this one. You could see how long we had to wait to do the calculation just because we have a big bunch of data in our sheet, no other reason. So in terms of that, that's why I showed you that thing at the beginning with the timing. Remember, I showed you that timing. And that's dramatic. The UDF has a dramatic effect on the timing, but it's harder to do. And maybe this is what we've been working on, is trying to get it so we can kind of make little templates and little examples of functions to make it easier. But I was going to take you through that later. But so your question is so wonderful, Josh. Really, really. But especially if it was what's easier, not easier. It's not easier, especially if you're writing them yourself. But efficient, it's dramatic. And then you can do, of course, you'd never want to make a data table in here, but you could make a data table. And then when you made a goal seek later, you wouldn't have to make a goal seek that goes around if you make a goal seek and you have a copy paste, you have to go goal seek, copy paste, goal seek, copy paste, and all that stuff, which even makes it less efficient.
And is the intention that in order to activate the UDF, you just come and click here, just as we do for macros? You have a button and you click that.
No, it's much better than that. It's much better than that. Let's make a UDF and then go home. Now, where do you live?
I'm in Geneva.
I know. So you speak French now or not?
Petit peu.
Oh, petit peu, un peu. Let's make a basic UDF function. So what you would do is you just petit peu. That's a très bon accent, n'est-ce pas? Okay, right. Just go to any macro. Just go to just open a blank macro. Anyway, just go to the developer tab and go to macros and just put this workbook. Okay, and then just press put in the create. Go up to the create, up to the very top in that thing where it says right now generic macros. Just put UDF example. Put UDF example. One word. Careful. Okay, and just press create. And all you do, go down, that's a sub, go after the end sub. No, leave that in as blank. And then go after the end sub, but we'll do the rest of it later. So after the end sub, all the way to below the end sub down there, and put function, space hello. And then below that, you press enter a couple of times. And then you put hello equals. You've got to put the name of the function and put equal, and then put in double gimme. Put bonjour. Okay. And then close that, and then go back to the Excel. and then you just put equal hello, and with the open and close bracket. Okay, and then just like that's kind of like the NA, and press enter. And that's the big deal. It's like a function. You just made a sum function. We could very quickly make a sum function. One of the things I do is sometimes, if you have a sum function and you have NAs, it gives you an NA, but maybe you want to convert the NAs to 0. You make your own little functions, and there's no button to press. The no button to press is actually the key. That's the key. And I can tell you, I don't know, after wasting so much of my life on this stuff, when I have a model and I see a optimized button or whatever the heck they call it up there, I am so psychologically reluctant to press that button, and I'm just afraid, is it going to go bad? And then I start looking at those input C scenarios and realize you got to press that button every time you change it. There's some psychological, I don't know if you agree, Eddie, you agree about this? Pressing the button is a big deal, and you don't have to press the button, but that's why we made it originally. That's why we made it originally. But now, the speed effect is the really only thing that matters. Okay, so that's just
very quick follow-up. Sorry for taking so much time. So then, let's say because you've already written up a UDF, if you wanted to activate that UDF, where it is on the model that you're doing it.
So here's a big problem with the functions. You can try to create add-ins and all that, and I don't. If you would make a new workbook, you would have to copy that function from this workbook to the other one. If it was a macro, you could have this workbook open. That's what we do with generic macros, and it automatically works. And that's why I don't know. I think last time we used an interpolate function last week. And we had to press this little button to copy it and bring it over. So that's a good point. And what we've been doing is working on this thing and making it all automatic. So you kind of press a little button and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it was very insightful, that thing. You can't. If you make a function, you can't have it, unless Brian tells me differently, you can't have it just automatic. You couldn't put a function in that generic macros, for example, and have it automatically look in generic macros and use that function. The function has to be in your sheet. At least that's my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, good. I have to teach this other class next Saturday, and then I'm traveling that Saturday after that, I think. So I might have to miss you for 2 weeks. I'll be crying because the fact that Josh, you've come to these things. It really has made me think through, kind of helped me a lot. Just think through some of the theoretical stuff, plus how to kind of walk through step by step some of these issues. Okay, so again, I'm going to check that chat box. I can't check it while I'm doing it, but if you, I'm going to see if anybody had some comments on some other issues you'd like to do, and we'll talk about the UDF finally. I'm sorry, I'm going around it for so long. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
And I'll have the model sent to you straight away.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
What I did this week is I wasted a lot of time putting some slides together. So here's our friend Nicholas Taleb. Here, in the not too distant past, say that pre-computer days projections remain vague and qualitative, and one had to make a mental effort, blah, blah, blah. It took pencils, erasers, and paper, waste baskets to do a forecast, to engage in the activity. The activity of projecting was effortful. horribly undesirable and marred with self-doubts, but everything changed with the spreadsheet. When you have an Excel spreadsheet into people like you who are very computer literate, they become effortlessly extending ad infinitum. We become bureaucratic planners. No thanks to these potent computer programs given to those who are incapable of handling their knowledge, whatever that means. But I like the comment about too much bureaucracy, and I really believe that's what kind of happened. And I think because I just screwed up, I'm going to I want to try to do this. I don't know how many people are here, but if you're here, I'm going to go through a list of issues that I have a question for you about whether you're interested in them. You know, in the old day, why did I do that? When I went through the history of modeling, I started in the 70s. You could write a program in the 70s and do some program. Then in the 19s came VisiCalc, and Lotus had one single sheet, and models had to be ridiculously simple. Then suddenly, oh my gosh, when Lotus had 3 different sheets and you had few more rows and columns, it totally changed, and these models became so absurdly unstructured. I remember putting things over here, all the way over here. And so people said, then in the 2020s, I think right now, we've hit the stage of monster models, I call them. They're gigantic models that I don't know how big they really have to be as big as they are. So enough of that. Instead of talking about fast or smart or all this kind of stuff, I talk about just 2 things to review. Press F2 to see if you can find every single equation you can have. And there's one little problem with the F2, and that's with the lookup function. And I tried to even make a little macro. So when you press F2, it shows you exactly where the lookup or the SUMIF or the index is coming from, because F2 doesn't really work that well with those 3 absolutely essential commands. And then and also if you can, and then you press this square bracket en français, c'est difficile, Eddie, in French you can't really do that. We got to figure out how to get that working. And F5 to come back. So of course we're gonna keep away from the big models. Oh, here's my audit, and then of course auditors come and they make so much money, and then they told me I've got a misspelling error in E242, and those people spelled misspelling wrong. I've told you, you might have heard me moan about that before. Okay, and enough of that. We love to, instead of trying to find a mathematical problem to solve something. I think that's been a big theme. Instead of that, and I'm guilty of this, let's make a cool big macro. Let's just make a macro or a UDF or a lambda. Let's just solve this ourselves. Just show how smart we are with the things. I just reviewed somebody else's slides, and when they did sculpting, Josh, what we're going to do right now is we're going to dive a little bit into this refinancing. And I can't believe you could do refinancing without using the NPV of debt service. And let's make it a little more advanced today, and let's put the NPV of debt service. Let's put some changing interest rates in here, and let's have a couple of different refinancings, not multiple debt issues right now. So whatever. This is psychology. Yeah, you got to read the models. Okay, enough of that stuff. Now, here's what I put your money on there. Here's what I want to ask you about, and here's what I'm thinking about. I got lecture. I have a lecture, and they said, "Oh, you've got to use the chat box. You've got to ask people what their favorite thing to do is, something special." I can't do that. There's no way. How about because I couldn't answer it myself. But oh my gosh, I'd say, my passion in life is coloring a spreadsheet or some crap like that. How about this? I'm going to go through some advanced issues right now that I think are advanced. I'm going to go through right now some issues that are not too advanced. And would you mind, I'm begging you to make this tiny little more interactive. Could you do in the chat box after I go through an issue? Can you just say, yes, I'm interested in this, or no, I'm not. I'm just interested in what people are really thinking about. Now here, I first start with some issues that I think are not too advanced, and in an arrogant kind of horrible way, sometimes I forget how old I am and how many times I've done this, and how some people, if you're new to modeling, some of these things are hard to do. If we could talk about, and this is primarily project finance. And I'm going to, what I've been trying to do is incorporate and say, oh, here's project finance and corporate finance, and let's see how they work together. And that was our big deal in consolidating the files and thinking about the return on investment on a consolidated basis versus a standalone basis. And I'm sorry, I'm more and more obsessed, not less obsessed, with using a corrected depreciation to avoid the big distortion in project finance, which is the capital going down and EBITDA or something going up and the ROIC getting crazy, and you have no benchmark. You have no way to test out after the fact, is this model performing the way it really should have from the IRR perspective? And I criticize that IRR. But everybody in the world uses it. This place called Amsterdam, and this lady, she drove me nuts. She said, oh, I found this Oxford professor who said the IRR is bullshit. Oh, good for you. Okay, we know the IRR has problems, but we know also everybody uses it. So let's understand it, and let's really understand the problems. That was the idea of the beginning, and I still think that's crucial. So sculpting, today we'll do a little bit with changing interest rates and even changing DSCRs. When you use the formula NPV equals debt service equals the debt, and when you use a little index formula, you can do any sculpting. And Josh, I might ask you to do our analysis today. Modeling. Sure. Thank you. Oh, see, I got a response. Oh, you got to meet Josh. You got to meet everybody. You got to become part of our little thing. You're doing fantastic. The DSRA. And when I try to do this stuff, the DSRA for me is just a little bit of cash you have to keep in your bank account, so that when something goes wrong and whatever, you run into a letterbox or something, you have a little cash to cover the cost. And in project finance, we learned from the IRR that all you want is that dividend to get it paid out really fast. And that DSRA could be enormously expensive or not so expensive. The DSRA has some modeling. The DSRA can be kind of painful, or you can model a DSCR instead of having cash. You have a credit card with a limit. You can use that for disasters too. Things go wrong, and if you're taking all your cash and spewing it out as a dividend, it's difficult. The MRA, for me, the maintenance reserve account, that's for these expenditures that occur in different periods. And what happens if the expenditures are different and they incur every 5 years or 2 years or 8 years? You have to look ahead and figure out how much you're going to spend, and then set up a reserve account that collects the money, basically limits the dividends. And by limiting the dividends, you throw it in a cash account, and then it builds up. It can be a horribly expensive thing to do. It's much better if you could really actually borrow money when that occurs. To do that, you have to work a little bit of flags, and almost the same kind of thing we did at the end of last session, where we put we use the sum if, and you can use a sum if and have a little counter, go forward with a sum if. We're talking about refinancing today with no taxes. If you put taxes in refinancing, it becomes it becomes a problem. We already did that timelines with that are flexible, and I notice people don't do that. And the key behind doing this, and I've learned so much from you. Now, if you have any of this stuff you want to go over, like DSRA or MRA, could you just put something in a chat box for me? Okay, and the flexible timelines, the big trick for doing that was putting a little flag and figuring out how to do that flag. And that flag was a construction or pre-COD flag. And most of the world wouldn't do it like that. Instead, they'd end up with these gigantic formulas. If you have a construction flag, and that can be tricky, because you also want to be able to say the construction is annually or the construction is monthly. And when you change that around, okay, if you have monthly construction and there are 2 years, you have 24 periods. If it's annually, you have 2 periods. You need to make that flag. I should have done that in the input C. Once you have that flag, you just take that flag and then you say, oh, okay, then we can take that flag and use E-date or EO month. I remember when E-date and EO month weren't in Excel. That was a big deal. When they put it in Excel, you used to have an add-in for it and all this stuff. Once you have that E-date or EO month, either one, who cares about the difference between the two, you can say, okay, then we put 1 month per period. I mean, yes, in the model of switching to 6 months, switching to quarterly, making it longer, making it shorter, and then you can do so much, but you need to start with that little flag. The resolution of circular references with a copy and paste block, we'll do a little bit of that today because we did it once, but we haven't done it with a very classic interest during construction and fees during construction. So we're going to do a little bit of that today. I think these waterfalls with where you can either take your cash flow and sweep it, meaning you're going to pay the debt off early and you're going to promise a long-term debt and make it into a short-term debt, but then you can do refinancing with that. Or if you run into a problem, you can take stuff out of a DSRA, and then you have to top up the DSRA. You can put a cash trap, which is a limit on the dividends if the DSCR gets a little bit too low. And then you want to figure out how you're going to restructure the debt with a default. We did some of that. And the big deal is that if I ever see an if statement in there, I kind of go completely crazy. All can be done, absolutely all, with minimum and maximum, and you just stick on the top, you stick the accounts like a cash trap account, a DSRA account, a default account. We can do all of that. We did some of those. And we did this selling of assets with holding period returns. And I think I learned so much from having to do this with you. Now I'm totally radically thinking of the way to value a project differently. For me, I'm reviewing this, but you start at the end. You start not everybody, you pretty well know what the discount rate on a project that's boring and mature will be, and it's a little bit above the cost of debt. And I am sorry about talking about my horrible career and my life. I used to have to testify in court on beta and capital asset pricing model, and I realized just how absolutely absurd this whole idea. And anybody who starts putting WACC and CAPM and unleveraging and re-leverage or ungearing and re-gearing betas, what BS. You start with the end, and then you make a short holding period, and then you figure out how much more you have to earn if you're taking development risk. And development risk, I've also learned very recently from looking at my friends at IDF, but there's nobody here, I think, from there. They lost only $1 billion on their development costs when they went into this very extremely high risk country with political risk called the US. And Ørsted lost $5 billion on the development. The development risk is a venture capital kind of risk. And you do that through measuring a holding period return, and you do your goal seek on a holding period return, and then you assume the project gets sold not at 7 years, at 3 years, somewhere after the project cash flows become stable. And some projects have very stable cash flows, other don't. I'm sorry, I'm in a funny mood. If we just have taxes, we have some circular references, shareholder loans. I don't make a big deal out of if you can make a cash sweep, and you can just assume the interest is capitalized as payment in kind, it's not a big deal. I haven't done equity first versus pro rata financing, and that's the first time you do this kind of stuff, it can be a little difficult. So if anybody wants any of those kind of issues, we'll do this. And I make these recordings of this, and maybe I can have even people send a email. But those are the not too advanced ones I consider. The advanced ones are, for me, this is not that advanced anymore, but I used to be freaked out about this. How do you do a P50 and a P90? And what you do not do ever is put P50 and P90 as separate little columns in that input C. You have to make a whole P90 and P50. And I remember as a banker, we used to sit around a room and BS and think, oh, the rules we followed were so ridiculous, but we had to always create a downside case. That was the big deal as a banker. What's the downside case? And the downside case, we even called a 10% case, which is like a P90 case. Nowadays, you think you can do these things statistically, and I had big arguments with people about how rigorous this kind of computing the standard deviation and using the norm inverse function is. So if anybody wants to do that, and it's not only, our renewable energy, can you just comment on that or say you're not interested? We've already done this second one, which Brian, I have to look at your file. I'm sorry, I was a little busy this week. Brian came up with a kind of a different method for doing this, and I'm totally, I have to, when I've seen what Brian does, I'm so impressed, and it's changed my ways of thinking. And sometimes we can have a good fight about it, but not getting all angry on the, and all that stuff. But we can see, does it, look at new ways to do this, but we've already done it. And you saw that took an entire session, and most of these would. And then I said, okay, here's the other thing that can happen, a debt service reserve account. Here's what happens with a debt service reserve account. You stick some cash in the bank, probably the bank that made the loan. You stick, maybe it comes up to 10% of the loan, 10% of the whole project, maybe 10% of the loan, I don't know. That's a gigantic amount. That could be almost as much of the equity if it's 90% equity. And if that DSRA comes from equity or comes from debt plus equity, we need to understand that. But here's the hard part. At the very end of the loan, you're going to have this cash flow sticking. When you finish the loan, all the DSCR gets paid. And if you have a cash DSRA, which is a little bit old-fashioned, I know that, then you can use that cash in sculpting. And the nightmare on circular references that you have on there, you could almost feel the circularity. So if you include the changes in the DSRA, the biggest of which is the very last change in the CFADS, which is entirely theoretically, it makes all the sense in the world. If you do that, then we're going to have some problems. That's an advanced issue.
And I have a question here, very quick.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Actually, it's related to point one. So, we encountered a similar situation where, let's say, the debt is sized on a more conservative case, so call it P90. And then for equity models or for the banks to even sensitize, they will want to see what happens if the revenues are actually better. And so they look at a P50 case. And what we saw was that while the debt was sized, you could always just use a simple copy and paste macro to say, okay, now that this is the repayment profile, you paste it on a separate line, and then you say freeze this, but now use different revenue assumptions. So it's not very automated, but it's still a way of doing it. So I was wondering if this is if this is how you plan to structure such a model, or you have different ways of doing it.
So this is, Josh, I used to do that, and I found that a little bit painful. And when you copy and paste, you would have to copy and paste the amount of debt and the repayment of debt and the DSRA, if you have a DSRA, anything that's related to the debt. And I used to do it like that. And then I tried my fancy UDF method, because then you have circular references and involved in all this. But now I see more and more people doing something that I think makes a lot more sense. So what you do is you put the P90 case. So you in your model, let's say you have an input C page, and you put your P50 and P90 in the same scenario. And then when you do all your debt sizing, PV of debt service based on whatever the cash flow, you compute EBITDA for P50 and EBITDA for P90. It makes the models a little bigger, not unbelievably bigger, really. So you get EBITDA of both P50 and P90. And then sometimes they have P99 in wind, so you could have 3 EBITDAs. But then once you do that, the debt size is based on the P90, and but then you can still take that P90, the lower kind of debt you get from a P90, and then you still have the P50 in there, and that's kind of the real. You get the IRR computed with the lower debt size coming from the P90, and you don't have to do this copying and pasting. So again, that's great, Josh, that you asked that question, because I did that, and I remember the first times people were doing this, they had this enormous data table that slowed down the whole thing, and now I look back on it, it wasn't that, it's not really that bad. So great, Josh. A fantastic example. Now, I heard somebody else ask a question which drove me a little crazy. I'm sorry. They said, oh, when you do the P90, well, you'd have to compute your taxes using the P90. So when you do your CFADS is cash flow available for that service. And if you're going to use the P90 for the CFADS, and that's going to have lower taxes. It might have a net operating loss, and it's going to be lower than the taxes you have on a P50. And they said, oh, we have to make that a conservative case. If we make it a conservative case, how can we have lower taxes than we have that we actually pay? And I say, BS. I say, remember, P90 is just a downside case. You make a whole consistent downside case with CFADS, and taxes are part of the CFADS, and the taxes you pay in that CFADS should be based on the lower cash flow, not the higher cash flow. Oh, very good. I'm going too long, Josh. In just a minute, we'll get started.
No, thank you. Thanks for explaining.
No, but this number 5, Josh, is what I really do think is important. And people don't understand this basic idea. If you've got a bunch of bankers, I used to be a banker who does risk analysis. You're the lowest of the low at the bank. All you have to do is sit and do scenarios, and when are you going to default? And you've got to invent a downside case and push it to a downside case. Then you've got people who do debt structuring, and they go to dinners and they talk about their fancy little, how do we get the debt to capital up, and should we use the SCR? And they're sizing the debt and structuring the debt. They're 2 different uses of the model. They're not the same use of the model. If you do a downside case, that's when you can almost fix the debt. Or I almost think it's almost like our P90 thing, Josh, is first structure the debt with the debt size, and then you copy. You don't really copy it. You use that debt structure in maybe a whatever, your P50 case or whatever, and then you assume, oh no, something's going to be bad happening in year 3. Inflation is going to be higher. Costs are going to be higher. Insurance is going to go up. All that, whatever you sue in the downside case, and then you put all the cash sweeps and cash traps in that risk analysis case. I'm going to show you this really fast. I'm going too fast. This business of multiple debt issues, all these projects. I mean, when I started, oh God, I remember my first class in '94 in Brazil. We never had more than one debt issue, and we never have sculpting. We had no idea what that even meant. Nowadays, there are all sorts of different debt issues, all sorts of different sculptings. How do you incorporate all of those in? And you can do it all mathematically. I did that for this webinar a little while ago, so we can talk about that one. So what I want you to do is put these up, and I've got about 20 of these. I'm sorry, I got to hurry up. And then this is Hetty's problem. Hetty, you might want to just stop on this one. This is this issue of if you size the debt based on let's say debt to capital, what you and that's and here's when you'd size the debt based on a debt to capital instead of the DSCR. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot too. Project finance is all about DSCRs. DSCRs are number one. Debt to capital is some little test after you do the DSCR. The DSCR is the essence of project finance. It's cash flow. It's how much we can cover. It's what our buffer of cash flow really is. It's all DSCR. But then you put this constraint on, and if you have really high cash flows, the debt is going to be really high, and then you're going to say, we've got a debt to capital of 99.2%. So the sponsor doesn't have to put any cash in the project, and they will care about the project if it does well, but they won't give a crap if it does badly. And just like Macquarie does give you the keys when it does badly. There are so many of these toll road projects, for example, where that happened. AES had this gigantic Drax plant in the UK that happened. On and on we can go. So if you have debt to capital as your constraint, then you could compute the repayment 3 different ways. And the worst method by far is to take the DSCR and take the cash flow divided by the DSCR, compute the repayment, and then cap the repayment, and you have a shorter tenor. Or you can do something, the second one, you can have a flat DSCR, and then that increases the dividends in the early periods. But Hetty, describe the last one, can you, when you set a changing DSCR?
Yes, that's correct, Ed. So just so just to optimize the sculpting, as Ed said, when we have the debt to capital as a constraint, which was my case always, Ed, as you know, working on projects in Africa with 18%, 20% even in years in the early 20s of return. So we could allow ourselves, to play with the sculpting and even get more dividends in the early years. So the idea is to start with if the cash flow permits, is to start with a higher DSCR and then find out how we can step it down until we get to that minimum that the lenders require. Of course, it requires, to still, how should I say, comply with some of the requirements from lenders like average DSCR or things like that. But yeah, this is very interesting, and it becomes even more challenging if you have couple of multiple tranches of debt. I remember in one of my projects in Rwanda, the Peat Power project, we had 4 type of, let's say 4 tranches of debt. One was like 18 years, another 15, another 12, another 10. So it was and I dared to apply this curved sculpting, and I had a gold SIG with the loop because I didn't know the maths at that time. I didn't, know your method. So I was forcing it with the gold SIG with the loop, which was horrible. It was just not, it was really difficult. It was mainly a manual thing to make sure that it's just matches. Yeah. So that's, for me, it's one of the most advanced things that.
Interesting. So we could do that. And the whole idea, this whole idea is our very first session. I did something too fancy. I started talking about the risk premium method and why the IRR doesn't work. But if you get dividends early instead of late, it has an enormous effect on the IRR. Remember, if you have, I'm going to do this example now that I've started to do much more. If you have, let's say, a 1 year or even a 1 year delay in a project, versus 10 years of increased cash flow, 10 years of extended life that give you 10 years of cash flow. The delay, it just delays the cash. The cash is the same, but it's just delayed. If you have with the effect of the IRR on the 1 year versus the 10 years, the bigger, much bigger effect is on the 1 year. It's the IRR distortions, but everybody uses the IRR despite what this poll or whatever said about the IRR being bullshit. Okay, sorry, I'm swearing today. Oh my gosh.
Professor, here I have one doubt on the debt sizing. So in the sixth lecture, where the cash flows were sort of low in some periods, so we size the debt, and to maintain the DSR, we ensure that there are some interest payments happening. But but we were not making the principal payment. So that means there is a sort of temporary moratorium that we are assuming. So in your experience, whether lenders allow this practice where we are not paying principal but only paying interest payments?
If the interest is bigger than the debt service, which is a problem now more and more, and that's we made this whole thing with this number 2. That was our number 2 when you would get negative debt. I think I totally agree. You could use payment in kind interest for. You said, okay, let's just instead of paying the interest, let's just put a little switch in our model and make it capitalize up to the debt. And if you did that, the debt balance would increase. And then the bankers, when they put the loan on the books, they have a maximum debt commitment. And if that maximum debt commitment starts getting higher, which is what payment in kind interest does, or allowing a, whatever you want to call it, a deferred repayment, which whatever you want to call that, it's a kind of, the bank has to give you more money. You pay the interest, but the bank is going to give you more money to pay that interest. It's almost like the pre-COD portion of the loan. If that happens, banks would not really like that. And I've seen bankers and I've seen them go kind of crazy about that. So this, and then there's the question for me is really an interesting one. What happens if this happens after a few years? And then you have the bank makes a debt commitment, but then the debt the debt is lower than the original commitment, and then you have some months, some periods where you have negative cash flow, positive, negative. We said, okay, set up this cash reserve account. And the cash reserve account is very, very costly. And the big reason it's costly, so we said, no, the bank's not going to allow that. Let's set up the cash reserve account. And I've experienced this, and it's been such a pain. I can't tell you. We did it, and I made some mistakes in doing this, and I had to revise the little video we made. That reserve account, when you put that reserve account at the beginning, that means you have to put more equity into the project. Sorry, it's as simple as that. And that's costly as heck. So your question is, great, what else can you do about it? I have this theory, but it's imaginary, that just like we have a DSRA account that has a letter of credit, you can make a DSRA that's not cash, but that just says, okay, we get to borrow money. Why can't you make a separate kind of revolving credit account or something? And the reason I'm liking your question so much is number one, if the debt goes higher than the debt commitment, the bank's not going to like that. And number two, it's a very horrible problem in Excel. But number three, can you be a little creative? And that's where you come in as modelers. That's why I think people who really, really understand the model, they will make so much better eventually kind of structuring bankers and everything else than other people. Can you say, no, let's, instead of putting the cash up front, when we need the cash, let's just make a debt commitment and start borrowing that. So I've been talking too fast, and I guess for me, this is another theme, is I guess you could say, let's go over that problem, because I think it's so much more powerful, instead of making some big model and trying to incorporate this in a big model, which I did. Oh God, it was hell. Instead of doing that, if you can make a little simple example and really demonstrate what's going on, why this is killing the IRR, and if there are really other alternatives, and what happens if you just have kind of ups and downs from solar, is that do you really need to put all that cash on the bank? Can't you just have a payment in kind interest on those winter months and then kind of redo that later? I haven't answered the question really, but I hope you can start thinking about these things. So I'm going to go fast now. Is that okay? I don't know if it was. We did this one. We did this using scenario. Oh, thanks. We did this. We're going to do the refinancing right now. Josh, just get ready. We're going to insert the file. I hope it won't take too long. I got to stop talking. This is taking more time than I thought. I would, in putting different currencies in and deciding which currency drives the DSCR, that could be a little tricky. And how should we model variation in currencies? Working capital sounds like such a simple thing, but it can drive you completely crazy if you have to set up one of these reserve accounts or a working capital revolving credit facility. And what happens if you have negative working capital sometimes and you have some extra cash on the bank? What you do with that? Mini perms, for me, mini perms, that's this great haircut thing. I don't have any hair. There you force refinancing instead of having an optional refinancing. Doing the mechanics, mini perms are a very big deal, I think. They're a way to get a low interest rate, assuming they have these gigantic step-ups in interest rate. It would be absurd for me to have a model that has this big step up in interest rate, this big gigantic incentive to refinance, and then you don't assume refinancing just because that's what's in the contract. That's what the people were telling me to do. No, they want you to refinance, you have to put it in. But this time, if it's a forced refinance, there can be a downside case on the refinancing where you can't get a good refinancing, and that can kind of increase your variation in equity cash flows. In equity bridge loans, I go crazy with equity bridge loans because you have this problem with the IRR measurement. And why? Not instead of just mechanical. Who gives a crap about this mechanical crap with the ridiculous IRRs you get with the equity bridge loan? And you can't, you have this classic problem you read about in textbooks where the IRR can't be computed if you have an up down cash flow. But what's the right way to do it theoretically, and why do you get these crazy IRRs in the first place? So Oh, enough of this. I'm going to go fast. I'm on the last page. Valuation of projects we did that. If you have an NOL and you have an expiration of an NOL, that's a hard problem. It really is, and it can make a bigger difference than you might think. And we have this problem that when you look forward and then you've already used the NOL, but then expires. For me, it's a hard one. A hard one even to explain. We did number 20. That's what we've done for the last few days. If we look at senior and sub debt, the interesting part here is not kind of doing just the mechanics of the waterfall and the Excel. The interesting thing is if the interest rate on the sub debt is higher, well, it's higher because you got more risk. How do you measure that risk? This is one of the few areas where I would say maybe do some kind of Monte Carlo simulation. It's very doubtful whatever. But how do we really come up with a method to evaluate whether, well, you're going to get more money on sub debt. If you're going to get paid, it's a much better investment. How do we evaluate the risk versus return in an objective basis? LLCR is easy to compute, except when you have different debt issues, just like Hetty was saying a minute ago. And you want to, then if you have different debt issues, what's the theoretically right way to do it? And should you use these weighted average discount rates? In number 23, you can have all sorts of equity structures and these things called the flips. When the IRR is suddenly hit, you get the investor number one gets the IRR before the flip, investor two gets it after the flip. It's a really interesting kind of thing. And then finally, the resolving circular references, which is my UDF, which we'll show you today quickly. And I'm just here's these slides I've made, and I've tried to. It's so I have to tell you, for you people who are ruining your weekends with this. This is, and I've shown you this before, we're going to show you a simple UDF and make it a little more complicated. This was, remember, I talked about this a little bit already. This was the time it took. We put a little timer and making a little macro that has a timer because project malls are getting big and horrible. If you have we put a little timer in there, and remember we had that thing in the consolidation where you copy and copy and copy. Now, if you have a little circular reference in every single one of these things, I hope we can get to this. If we can't, I'll do this. By the way, next week and the week after, I can't have a class. I'm crying. It took 52 seconds. Then we put an IDC and a fee. I put an IDC and a fee, and I said, let's just switch on the iteration button. That took 340 seconds compared to 52 seconds. That was the worst thing to do. That slowed, it didn't have all these things, and Brian, I still am struggling. I think you're right about the goal seeks, but Brian, if there is a goal seek where that the goal seek is affected even in the very slightest degree by something in the iteration, the goal seek won't work. So you taught me that, Brian. Thank you. Brian told me sometimes the goal seek works. Well, that's a goal seek where you have a goal seek and it doesn't depend on the IDC or the fees or the taxes or these things that create the circular reference. But even if you just this is no goal seek, this is only whatever, putting the circular reference in with the iteration button. And then we put a circular reference in with the copy and paste. And that was better than iteration, but it took about more than, I guess, 50. Yeah, that would be 100. So it took about more than twice. And then we put the UDF in. And the UDF took 54 seconds instead of 52 seconds. So I'm going to show you what this UDF thing is all about. And for me, all the other, well, Eddie and I made some kind of arguments. Oh, you should do it like this, just because we kind of came up by accident with this kind of method, but it really works. And Brian explained it to me. It really works because you're doing all the circular references kind of outside of Excel, and you're not doing a copy and paste or letting Excel try to iterate it ourselves. So Josh, let's do now I sent, did you get the file that I sent? I did.
I can share my screen.
Okay, so I hope that I'll stop sharing. Okay, good. Okay, and whoops. Oh, did I? Oh, fantastic, Josh. So if you go